Good Sunday morning and welcome to Inside Tennessee. I'm one of your moderators, John Becker. We are pleased to have with us two of the most powerful government lawyers in East Tennessee on with us this morning. Let's take a look at their resumes quickly and then we'll introduce you. This is General Jimmy Dunn, and you can see the counties that he covers and the estimated population as well. And let's move to General Effler as well. You can see the counties he covers: Campbell, Claiborne, Fentress, Scott, and Union. Again, together, both these gentlemen cover more than 300,000 people in East Tennessee. Generals, it's good to have both of you with us this morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
I'm going to introduce our panel and we'll get to questions. On the end there is Don Bosch. He knows them quite well. He's in the legal system, runs his own law firm. He's a Democrat.
Good morning. Nice to be here on friendly confines.
Yes, it is. And we have Eddie Smith with us, who is a Republican and also used to be a lawmaker in the state of Tennessee. Nice to see you, Eddie.
Good morning. Glad I am not a lawyer today.
Yes, indeed. And
we are too.
John North and I are glad we're not in trouble.
I'm always glad when I'm not in trouble.
Yes. Generals, let's talk to you first about the top priorities that you have in the districts you cover right now. General Effler, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm proud to be a victim-focused district attorney's office, and I think that any conversation about our criminal justice system should begin and end with how is this going to affect crime victims. Crime victims in Tennessee have a constitutional right to be free from harassment and intimidation throughout the criminal justice system. I think it's incumbent on us as district attorneys to make sure that that's always followed.
We have seen new movement in that in the state legislature. Our panel will have some specifics on that. But General Dunn, what would you say is the top priority for you?
Well, always victims. I mean, that's where we are. We have to we try to help them. We try to explain the law and what's going to happen to them along the way. And it's very, very difficult from times, especially in domestic violence cases and also in homicide cases.
What have you both pushed for recently that would help victims? As I mentioned, we've seen some action in the state legislature to give victims, I don't know, say or power that we might see a suspect have as well. General, you explain what changes you think have been beneficial.
There's been several along the way, but the thing that we have to have is victim advocates. We have to have people that will call victims, get them to the courtroom, get them to our office where we can talk to them and explain to them and listen to them. And that's very important because they're stuck in a place where all of a sudden it's completely foreign to them, and so we try to work in that regard. So I've been working really hard and trying to get more victim witness coordinators, and of course that's a money issue, and so we had to rely on grants, and I could go into that further, but we weren't sure we were going to get anything this year.
Well, and if I could jump in there on the victim advocate, because you know where you're at, you've got Jeremy Faison, who is chair of the caucus. You up in Union County, in some of those areas, you've got Dennis Powers, some people who have some very good influence. One of the things that I know that is drastically affecting you all are the VOCA cuts. That's the Victim of Crime Act cuts. We've seen a 50% cut in the last 3 years, looking at potentially another 25% coming from the feds over the next year. That's a significant thing that we're going to be facing, really from child advocacy centers across the state, victims. How can we help you all in making sure the legislature knows that need?
Well, I think it goes back to a survey that we commissioned from crime victims a few years ago as the Tennessee District Attorney General's Conference. And we asked those victims, as you navigated the criminal justice system, what's the one resource that you appreciated the most? And overwhelmingly, they said a victim witness coordinator who would sit down with me and explain the process, but more importantly, listen to my concerns. And of course, those take resources and personnel resources, and that's the most expensive part of government generally is personnel. And right now we have over 20 victim witness coordinators that are on VOCA grants across our state, and we truly believe it's the iceberg on the horizon, because if we lose those persons, victims are going to lose those services, and we want the legislature to know that we need to convert those VOCA-funded victim witness coordinators to state positions so that they have job security, and General Dunn and I can recruit and retain good people, but more importantly, there's no lapse in services to our crime
I mean, it's
victims.
important to point out, these aren't lawyers. These are almost social workers versed in the system, and it really lets your assistant district attorneys get in the courtroom and do what they're trained to do, right?
Right.
Yes, that's a very good point, Don.
And just to dive a little deeper into that, General Dunn, explain how they help the victims walk through the process.
Well, they're the first contact. They're the first contact, and they talk to them. They take their phone calls. They bring them in. They make sure that they can come to us and sit down and talk, answer their questions. They need somebody to reassure them that things are going to get better somewhere along the way. So they call. They send out letters, but they call on the telephone. They go to the residents if they're necessary or whatever, along with other people. Then you're involving other folks as well. But the real thing, and before we leave that, they do a lot of stuff, and when the victims come in, they're looking, instead of looking at me, they're looking at the victim witness, because that's the person that they know that was going to help them understand what's going on. Of course, I explained the law to them, and knowing what we're going to do and how it goes, and where they have to be, and so it's very important, and that continues.
That's
that
a
continues.
year-long process.
It is. It's a constant thing, and it's a real problem right now. So if we could get some more money, get these into regular employees, and we went right up to the wire this year before we ever got a contract or whatever, right up to the wire. And so we had to hustle, and of course these folks didn't know if they was going to have a job.
Yeah.
And I have 6 of those. We're
going to talk more about other issues that you're facing, the 313 initiative that many of you have heard about, involving drug trafficking, and what the steps are that these gentlemen, along with other law enforcement partners, are taking in East Tennessee to fight that crime. We're back with our conversation right after this. Back on East Tennessee on this Sunday morning with 2 attorneys general in East Tennessee representing close to 300,000 people, Jimmy Dunn and Jared Effler. Good to have both of you, John.
Gentlemen, Tennessee voters are going to be asked a question about amending the Constitution, and in criminal justice circles it's significant. It deals with the question of, can judges have some more discretion to hold defendants regarding bail in particularly violent crimes? I'm interested in your positions, and if there's any kind of a movement to really sort of push this across the line. General Effler?
Well, I'm 100% in favor of this constitutional amendment. I believe it will be one of the most transformative changes that we have seen to improve public safety in our state since I've been a prosecutor. One of the most common criticisms that I hear from victims and the general public is the revolving door. You know, law enforcement, they do their work, but then the criminal is immediately released on bail. And we understand that we can't hold everyone pretrial, but when you have a violent offense where the proof is evident and the presumption is great, this constitutional amendment will allow judges the discretion in appropriate cases to hold that defendant pre-trial pending his or her trial. And I think it's really important to understand the type of cases this will apply to. We're talking second-degree murder, we're talking rape of a child. And I would pose the question, if we have someone charged with rape of a child, we have a confession, we have the crime even on video, why would we grant that person bail? Under the current law, the judge has to grant that defendant bail. This constitutional amendment will change that.
Our defense attorney is probably going to jump in. As a matter of fact, he just did. But I want a follow-up question, and that is, are there examples in your district where that's happened?
Yes, absolutely. There's examples where if the constitutional amendment was already in place, we would unequivocally ask the judge to hold that person without bail pending trial.
So, Jared, I understand the policy, and it does make sort of objective good sense. But the reality that I experience as a defense lawyer and that I've seen, most of the people charged with those crimes, the judges are imposing such a high bail amount on them, it is a de facto hold without bail. How many people are really making $250,000, even $1 million bond sometimes on these kinds of cases?
More than you would think, because what happens oftentimes if a defendant solicits a bondsman and that bondsman is
work with bonding companies regularly.
If they're near their limit, they will pull bonding companies together to make that bond. Bonding companies are taking literally pennies on the dollar to get people out of jail. They're setting up payment plans for those offenders, and it really doesn't give us as prosecutors a lot of assurance that that person is going to come back to court.
Isn't there a legislative fix for that?
Well,
Yes, we're voting on it in November.
Right, I mean, no, you require...
The legislative fix, I agree with Eddie, is to allow the judges, and again, it's important for the public to understand as they're considering this constitutional amendment, this is not going to apply to all cases. It's only going to apply to violent offenses where the proof is evident and the presumption is great. And the burden is on us to show that this is an appropriate case to hold this defendant without bail.
General Dunn, do you have some thoughts on this?
I mentioned a while ago about domestic violence cases, and this is where you see so much of this.
Right.
One of the persons have been arrested. They make bond immediately, or are supposed to stay 12 hours. They make bond, and there's more harm done. You've got a case in our neck of the woods right now. A fellow was shot, another fellow, and made bail, got out, and went and killed 3 people. Right now. So that's what the problem is, and I mentioned domestic violence because I see so much of it.
But generally, Jimmy, domestic violence is not going to be covered by this constitutional amendment.
No.
You're still going to be able to post and make bail and bond. And I understand the revolving door problem. It is a small percentage, but one is too many if they get out and do harm. I agree with that as a defense lawyer. But I don't want to say this is a tempest in a teapot, but I wonder if a constitutional amendment is a bit of overkill, because I'm a little cautious about amending any constitution, federal or state.
Yes.
Well, it should be done seldom, on a seldom basis. I acknowledge that, but we've already got a preview of this. Under the federal system, there's no constitutional right to bail, and we see that works beautifully where the federal system is able to hold violent offenders without bail pending.
And they have on
trial.
occasion held innocent people for a very long time.
Well, again, that's why the burden is on prosecutors to show that the proof is evident and the presumption is great. And it's a burden that I relish. I look forward to hopefully Tennessee voters passing this and us as prosecutors being able to use it to make Tennessee a safer place.
Let's move to the 313 initiative. This is something that deals with this drug pipeline that we've seen for years and heard about for years, reported on for years, between the community of Detroit, which is represented by the area code 313, and East Tennessee. Jared Effler, you've been a part of this. What are the results?
Well, we're seeing tangible results. We are seeing defendants being held accountable, especially here in Knox County. General Allen is doing a tremendous job with the 313 initiative, and then her neighbors, General Dunn and I, were working collaboratively with TBI and all of our local partners to make sure that we're putting at least a dent in the pipeline from Detroit down to Knoxville.
Do you think it's been worth the investment, General?
I do. The very day that we made our announcement on the 313 initiative, my office, I authorized a padlocking of a house, a residence, numerous
under our nuisance law, which should be done.
Inside was a person from Detroit, Michigan, who had come down here and brought his wares with him, and he was there that day. So it reaches everywhere. It doesn't stop in Knoxville, Tennessee. It doesn't stop in this community. It goes down to Sevier County, Cocke County, Jefferson County, Granger County, all of them. It just keeps going and going.
And that's why we've seen that partnership. We're going to be back with more of our conversation with 2 attorneys general here in East Tennessee right after this. We are pleased to have 2 district attorney generals in studio with us this morning, Jimmy Dunn and Jared Effler.
Generals, both of you have populations with fairly high immigrant populations, certainly even relative to Knox. And there's a lot of agrarian work that goes on and construction work, particularly Jimmy in your district, and I know Jared also in yours with agriculture. Are you seeing a disproportionate amount of crime committed by immigrants, whether they're here with status or without status, 1? And 2, are you sending your detainees that show an ICE hold in NCIC, are you sending those people to the Knox County Jail, who has a 287G program where they're funded to deal with these people and transfer them? So, Jimmy, I'll start with you.
We don't send them anywhere.
Okay.
We don't even participate in it. And the answer to your question is no. I don't see a lot. These are folks that come in and they work in tomatoes and various products that are grown. And no, I don't see a lot of that. But what I do see are people coming in that don't work, and bring their wares with them, their drugs or whatever, and bring their drugs
Those people
with them.
do get into the criminal justice system,
yes.
but not necessarily at a higher rate than the citizen population.
No, but what you got to understand is a little bit different. And I wish I'd mentioned this earlier, but in Sevier County, we have over 12, 13, 14 million people
Yes.
a year visit. That's in addition to the 200 and some odd thousand that, people that live there on a regular basis. So people, when they come in, they bring their problems with them. Whatever it is, you know,
So,
whatever it is.
Jared, what about in your district?
The illegal immigrant issue is not a significant problem in my district at all, Don.
And you're not seeing a disproportionate amount of crime committed by whether they're with status or without status, as I like to say. No. And you're not shipping those to Knox County.
No. We have, before there's the recent focus on illegal immigration, we have historically cooperated with our federal partners, and nothing has changed in that regard.
Well, and kind of following up, because we're not seeing that huge crime wave in the illegal immigrant population. What we are seeing, though, is even a lot of Americans that are what has come to be known in our realm as familial trafficking. Grandparents selling kids for drugs, for money. What are you all doing, and how are you all working to combat that, but also just the entire sex trafficking trade? Because we all live right here where all the interstates converge, and it's something that's hugely important in our area.
Well, education, Eddie, is one of the most important things we can do, is to educate the general public about things to be looking for. And the best way that we can get that information out there, I believe, is through our child advocacy centers. They do a tremendous job with public education, and I'm proud to partner with them. We're very blessed in the 8th Judicial District that we have a child advocacy center in each of our 5 counties. And I think that's the key, is to educate the general public and let them know that this isn't just some fantasy that's out there. It's a reality that we need to be confronting head on.
This has always been a problem in my neck of the woods. It's always been a problem. Years ago, people were brought in for 2 months or 3 months and then moved on to another place. And so it's always been a problem. So we do everything we can to get the message out. We have various agencies that help us with that. So we have to be aware that this is a very serious problem. So when we have several agencies there in my neck of the woods that are helpful. Of course, we have our Child Advocacy Center, and that helps us a lot in that regard. But when we go out to make an investigation on a particular thing, we see things, and we see things that people are not where they're supposed to be. They don't act right, and there again I go back to the domestics, because a lot of time domestics are involved in that, and it's very difficult to get the people that are being smuggled, that's what I call it, smuggled in and used and abused and then moved on to another place.
I want to ask you guys about something that's fascinated me or intrigued me over the course of decades. When I first moved to East Tennessee, we had about 100 people on death row. And certainly in Sevier County, I don't know about the rest of the district, it was pretty aggressive in terms of charging and seeking and prosecuting death penalty cases. Those have fallen off significantly in the state of Tennessee. We have less than 50 people who are on death row right now. You don't see those cases as often as you used to. Why not? General Effler, I'll start with you.
I think it's because that the process is so arduous. When, as prosecutors, we sit down with the victim's family and we explain that it may be 30 years before the sentence of death is rendered, if in fact it is even handed down by a jury. And oftentimes I think when you have prosecutors weighing the effort of seeking the death penalty and the decades-long commitment, that a lot of families are choosing to go with a life without parole sentence. And I think all that's by design. I think the criminal defense bar is purposely made the process arduous and want to drag it out to discourage.
That's a little unfair. I think the courts have a little more to do with it than the criminal defense bar.
To discourage victims' families and prosecutors from seeking the death penalty.
The Constitution is a little speedy.
If I may, two comments on this. Where we had a shooting in my district, and two people were killed and 2 were seriously injured. And the third one, the fourth person, jumped and ran and got shot in the face, and the bullet went down. And in that, they both, the victims that lived, told me they weren't going to testify. Absolutely not. That was a death penalty case. That was something I could do. They didn't want to testify. So we worked out, and where we got 2 consecutive life without paroles plus. It was just a terrible, terrible thing from a young man who had been a school resource officer and wanted drugs. But also, I deal with a case from 1990, and General Smuster and I tried that case and got the death penalty. There was an error made in the paperwork from the court, and so some 4 years later we had to do a resentencing, not the trial itself, but the resentencing. Got the death penalty again from 12 more people that had never heard any of the. So we're talking about now 35 years come October the 15th, and that family, the people have died in the family. There's 1 sister and 1 brother-in-law left. And then there's a couple of nieces somewhere along the way. And they still haven't seen that. And they go to Nashville, Tennessee, they come to Newport, Tennessee, and they go over to Sevierville, Tennessee, and victims things, and they are strong advocates. They want to see the death penalty done. So it's not something that they can see. There's no, and I don't like the word, but this word is closure. There is no finality to a death penalty case, as I said.
General Dunn, General Effler, we appreciate both of your expertise and your time today.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We'll be back with our talk around, and we hope your Sunday is starting well. Don, we're hoping you can underline specifically the impact and the importance of these top prosecutors, district attorney generals in our community.
Sure. Each judicial district, and for example, Knox is just its own, and where Jared Effler has 5 counties, and Jimmy Dunn has 4, they are the only prosecutor, state or federal, that is chosen by the people and accountable to the people. They are the only elected prosecutor. All of their assistants, all of the federal prosecutors, none of those are elected. 2, they usually run the largest law firm within a judicial district. There are a number of lawyers, and they're usually the biggest group of lawyers in one single office. So they have a tremendous amount, the district attorney general, tremendous amount of authority, oversight, work, balance to run a good office. And both of these gentlemen, I've been against both of them and their offices, they really do a good job.
They're also serving 8-year terms, which is
long
unique.
time.
Yeah.
That's right.
Eddie, we talked about this constitutional amendment that voters will have a choice on. How do you expect that to break?
Honestly, I think when people really understand what it's going to do, and the fact that we're giving judges the ability to keep violent criminals, as Jared said, you know, there's parameters to that. I think most voters are going to say, yeah, we think the judges should be able to keep those people off the streets.
And that would be alleged, by the way, not necessarily violent criminals.
And Don, you were pushing for, hey, you understand the motivation here, but perhaps the legislature should make that move instead of enshrining it in the Constitution.
Right. Jared brought up a good point that the bonding companies who typically would charge 10% previously, they are reducing these to be competitive down to 1, 2, 3. I haven't seen a 1%, but 3, 4, 5%, and getting together. And so it's, if you put a $100,000 bond, there's an expectation it'd be $10,000. Well, sometimes they can get out for 2 or 3. There's a legislative fix. Let's cap. Everybody has to bond at a certain amount, or have clerk bonding.
I guess I would jump in here and say, based on my experience, that there are instances, and you made the point with regards to federal defendants, where the wrong people are kept, and sometimes kept a long time.
Always my concern as a defense lawyer.
I'm not saying that a prosecutor anywhere wouldn't say this is wrong and we have to stop it. It still happens.
John, Eddie, Don, appreciate the conversation. We appreciate you watching on Inside Tennessee. Hope to see you back here next Sunday morning.